Obviously, it's not the first Saw movie you've been working on. So I was wondering, how much did your personal relationship, change or develop between the making of the first Saw movie and this one?
Well, a lot because Saw 1 was my first film as an editor, and I had just been an assistant editor before that. So obviously that was a big jump. And then I started directing with Saw 6. So now I feel like sort of my whole career has been encompassed in the Saw saga. I've done lots of other films too, but I've worked on every one of the Saw movies. So it's a very important part of my life.
Right. And Anthony, obviously, as a production designer, it is kind of your job to make us believe that the world we get to explore truly exists. And I was wondering because, like 10 movies in, a lot of people feel like they know what a Saw movie needs to look like. And I was wondering, when you came on board, how did you make sure you kind of, like deliver familiar images, but at the same time making sure that you still get to be experimental and inventive as an artist?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. For us, we looked at the first two Saw films and we really appreciated all the work that was put into those. And we love the oxidized metal and the grittiness and the mechanics of those early traps. When we looked at those films, we felt like there was a genuine quality to them. We felt that they were real. And maybe some of the last few Saw films, the traps were a little out of control. They got a little, kind of wild. And we wanted to go back to the early days, and we wanted to be genuine and real and give the fans what they wanted. We also looked at the film, at the giallo films of the 60s and 70s. So we wanted to stick to that as well and bring in those colors. So as far as making like environments real and believable, you know, we always look at the story. The story is so important to us. So going through, I don't know if you got to see the film. Did you get to see Saw X?
Yes, yes, I've seen it. Yeah.
Okay, great. So like what's important is, that first portion of the film where, the colors are cooler and he's going through all these emotions of, with his cancer and everything. And then going into Mexico and giving him some hope. We just want to make sure that, as an audience member, you could feel that, and we also wanted to present Mexico in many different ways, which you see in the movie. But obviously, at the end, when we're in his lair, we felt like we want to make sure that's very classic Saw with all the rust and the green tints and all of the details, the mechanics, and making sure that everybody sees that John is this engineer and this has this diabolical mind, but he still has this sort of moral code that he has. So it's just all those little details, everything from the props to the decor and such. And anyway, I hope that you really enjoyed it.
I absolutely did. I really have to tell you that. And I have to say, I was also like one of those, when Saw X was actually announced as Saw 1.5, I was like, oh, is there really enough story to be told in the past, or is it just going to be like a filler or whatever? No. But now that it's out, and I mean, you've seen the reviews, it's like the best reviewed Saw movie ever. And and now after I've seen it myself, I know, yes, damn, there is a lot more to be told in the past. And Kevin, I was wondering for you, when was the very first moment you had realized, you know what? There is actually so much more to be told about Jigsaw.
Well, it was when I read the script because when I heard about the script, it didn't. I don't think I really understood the possibilities of it. But then as soon as I read it, I was like, oh, well, that's of course the best direction to go.
So you had like the same reaction when you read it that I had when I watched it
Yeah,
then.
yeah, I think so. And I immediately told, gave it to my wife and said, "You have to read this." And we both were just like, "Hell yeah, this is great." And then as we were developing the project, and I was giving the script to candidates to work on the film, like Anthony, they all came back and were like, "Whew." Some of them didn't even know much about Saw, but even those ones were very enthusiastic about it.
Something that's really fascinating about the saga, the process, all of this is that, Tobin, imagine Tobin, right? Back in 2004 and being on that first film. And then imagine if we had done that film next, this film, Saw X, right? But the reality is that he went through all of these movies. He's
Yeah.
carried all of this information inside him. And so
Mhm.
we were just so fortunate to make Saw X with him now, because he is like filled up with all this stuff inside and emotion. And this was such an emotional journey for John Kramer. And as an actor, Tobin was like amazing, like top notch. He should receive awards for the work that he did in this movie. And he was everything from intense, brutal, in your face, to tender, to understanding, to fragile. And I just feel like we got lucky. We were lucky to have. And then Kevin, Kevin has all of this. He's edited all of these films, and he knows what he needs. And it was just like this marriage, this connection of the two of them. And I feel like we were just so fortunate to be a part of this.
And one other thing that I could say about that is that even though this story takes place between Saw 1 and 2, if somebody who was totally new to the Saw series was going to watch it, I would not say watch 1 first and then X and then 2, etc., because this movie is I think it's made a lot more powerful because you know what happens to John Kramer in Saw 2 and 3, and maybe even all the other films as well, because it is kind of a love letter to Tobin Bell's character of John Kramer, and I like to think that the end of this movie is an emotional send off for him. And if you were to watch it after Saw 1, it would spoil a lot of Saw 2 and 3, because we're still sort of mysterious about who John Kramer is. He's not usually the main character of those stories, but in this one he definitely is. And I feel for myself it represents my maturity, if you will, as a filmmaker, and for everybody that was involved in the film. I just think we've come a long way as storytellers, and that's what this movie's all about.
Absolutely, yeah. And speaking of emotional scenes, also, Anthony, what would you say is more difficult? Like creating believable environments and worlds. Whenever the movie is intense, and when the traps are on cam, or is it like more difficult when we actually get to see like the more emotional side of Jigsaw?
Well, I think that first of all, of course, it's really a challenge for every film to make sure that we are presenting the environment, to the audience that helps tell the story, all of that, right? But I'm going to sort of flip it and say that the performances in this film made our job, a lot easier, because people really believe that what's happening in these traps is real. We can make awesome traps, but if the performance isn't there, then the traps just go to the side. So Kevin knew so much of this script and so much of what he wanted to see, and we had a lot wonderful concept art and wonderful storyboards that helped keep us on track. And I just feel like with all of that homework done, we were able to do a really amazing job. So I think it's a lot of homework that really helps us, but we were fortunate in this case that Kevin had gone through all these films and could guide us. So
Right, absolutely. And Kevin, I mean, obviously the traps have always been a part of the Saw films, but I was wondering, when it comes down to Saw 10, how did you make sure that that the traps are actually pushing like the story and the narrative forward, instead of having traps that are there just to be there?
Um, it's because so much careful work was done from the beginning at the script stage to make sure that that the traps all thematically felt like they fitted each of these characters and what their sins and crimes were. And Tobin really encouraged us to think always about that, and think always of new ways to make his own dialogue be metaphorical and poetic, and the messages that he leaves for them on the tapes to have that sort of Jigsaw magic. And it really just came down to putting in a lot of work for it. The earlier Saws, we made them each year and only really had a few weeks to write each one of the scripts, but this script has been percolating since 2017. So there was a lot more time to work on it and think about it and get it right.
Awesome. Seriously, Kevin, Anthony, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate your time and talking to me about your new movie. And you have my best wishes for it. And see you soon.
Well, thanks a lot. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you
thank
so
you
much.
so much. Thank you.